The wagon disappeared into the storm, leaving Cordelia June Washington alone at Broken Creek Station with nothing but thunder and the echo of her stepfather's cruel words. Rain hammered the broken roof above her head. Augustus Moore had finally done what his eyes promised every day since her mother died: cast her off, left her like unwanted cargo at this godforsaken stop where trains came twice a week if the tracks stayed clear. Cordelia pulled her threadbare shawl tighter around her shoulders. The worn carpetbag at her feet held everything she owned now: 3 dresses, her mother's Bible, the wooden comb Papa Augustus said cost too much to buy. She pressed her back against the station wall. The wood felt solid despite everything falling apart. Her breath came steady though her heart hammered against her ribs. 22 years old and nowhere to go. No family left who claimed her. No prospects Augustus hadn't poisoned with his bitter tongue. The storm raged for 3 days. Cordelia made herself small in the corner of the abandoned station house. She found a rusty bucket that caught rainwater from the leaking ceiling. Wild berries grew behind the building, bitter but enough to keep the hollow ache from consuming her completely. On the second night, she sang, low and careful so her voice wouldn't carry beyond these walls. The spirituals her mother taught her when the world felt too heavy. Songs about rivers to cross and burdens to lay down. Her voice cracked with thirst, but the melodies held her together when everything else wanted to break. By the 3rd morning, the rain stopped. Sunlight crept through the gaps in the station walls. Cordelia explored every corner of her temporary shelter. She swept debris with her hands, made order from chaos because order meant hope. Behind a loose board near the ticket window, her fingers found something solid: a wooden box wedged tight in the wall cavity. She worked it free with careful patience. The lock had rusted through decades ago. Inside lay $200 in gold coins, more money than Augustus ever held at one time, more than her mother saw in all her years of washing other people's clothes and tending other people's children. Beneath the coins, a letter, yellow paper soft as cloth from age and handling. The ink had faded, but the words stayed clear enough to read. My dearest Cordelia, if you are reading this, then the Lord has guided your steps to where your loving father left provisions for your journey west. I have gone ahead to California to build us a life worthy of your mother's memory. Follow when you are able. The station master was a friend to travelers seeking freedom. He promised this money would find its rightful owner. Trust in the path ahead, daughter. Your devoted father, Solomon Washington. Her hands shook. The letter fell to the dusty floor. Solomon Washington, her real father, the man her mother spoke of in whispers when she thought Cordelia couldn't hear. The one Augustus said died before Cordelia drew her first breath. The ghost who lived in her mother's sad smiles and faraway stares. Alive, in California, waiting for her. Cordelia gathered the coins with reverence. Each piece felt heavy with possibility. Freedom had weight after all. Her father understood that. He left her breadcrumbs to follow when the time came. She tucked the money deep in her carpetbag, hidden beneath her mother's Bible where searching hands wouldn't think to look. The letter went there too, proof that someone in this world claimed her as blood, wanted her to find him. The guilt came slower than the joy. Her father called this place a haven for travelers seeking freedom. Other people might need these coins more than she did. Desperate souls running toward something better than what they left behind. Maybe the money belonged to them, but the letter said rightful owner, called her by name. Solomon Washington knew she would come here somehow. Knew Augustus would finally show his true heart and cast her aside. A father's intuition reaching across years of separation to provide for his daughter's need. Cordelia made her choice. She would take what her father left, use it to reach him in California, build the life he promised in his letter. Outside, the sun climbed higher. The storm had washed the air clean. Everything smelled of new beginnings and second chances. She settled back against the wall to wait. Trains came through twice a week, Augustus said. Someone would stop eventually. Someone would help her find passage west. For the first time in 3 days, Cordelia smiled. She had family after all, blood that claimed her. a father who thought ahead to provide for her journey. The abandoned station felt less lonely now, more like a way station between her old life and everything waiting ahead. She sang again, louder this time, songs about promised lands and rivers of hope. Her voice carried through the open windows, strong and clear and full of possibility. No longer the sound of a woman left behind, the sound of a woman preparing to be found. The sound of cattle reached her first, low bellowing carried on the wind along with the creak of leather and jingle of spurs. Cordelia straightened against the station wall. Dusk clouds rose on the horizon where the trail bent toward water. She smoothed her dress, checked that her carpetbag sat closed tight beside her feet. The money stayed hidden beneath her mother's Bible. Her father's letter pressed close to the coins where no searching fingers would find them. 6 riders emerged from the dust. Cattle stretched behind them in a brown river flowing slow across the prairie. The men sat their horses with the easy grace of those born to saddle and sky. Their faces carried the weathered look of too many miles under too much sun. The lead rider dismounted near the station steps, tall and lean with dark hair that caught copper in the late light. His hands moved gentle on the reins, patient with his horse in a way that spoke of deeper kindness underneath the trail dust and worn leather. Cordelia watched him scan the broken building. His eyes found her in the shadows. No surprise there, no judgment either, just quiet assessment of a woman alone at an abandoned station with storm clouds gathering overhead again. The other men followed their leader's gaze. Their faces changed when they saw her. Mouths twisted, eyes narrowed. One spat in the dirt. Another muttered words too low to catch but sharp enough to cut. The tall man raised his hand. Silence fell over his crew. He approached the station steps, stopped at respectful distance. His hat came off revealing eyes the color of winter sky. Lines around them spoke of squinting into horizons and weather that broke lesser men. "Ma'am, you waiting on someone?" His voice carried the roughness of wind and campfire smoke, but underneath lay something careful, something that knew how to speak gentle to spooked creatures. Cordelia lifted her chin. "Family's coming for me." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue, but truth would make her seem more desperate than she already appeared, more alone than any woman should be in country this hard. The man studied her face. His gaze lingered on the shadows under her eyes, the way her dress hung loose from 3 days of berry meals and rainwater. He knew hunger when he saw it, knew the look of someone trying to appear stronger than they felt. Storm's coming in again. This old place won't hold against another blow. He gestured toward the broken roof, the gaps in the walls where wind whistled through, the door hanging crooked on rusted hinges. "We're making camp by the creek. Hot food, dry shelter under the wagons. You're welcome to join us till your people arrive." Behind him, one of his men shifted in his saddle. "Silas, we ain't running no charity outfit here." The tall man turned. His winter eyes went cold as January morning. "Dutch, you got something needs saying." The cowboy called Dutch worked his jaw, shook his head, stayed quiet. Silas faced Cordelia again. His expression softened back to careful kindness. "Offer stands, ma'am. No woman should weather another storm alone in this place." Cordelia weighed her choices. Stay here and hope the building held together through whatever weather came next, or trust these strangers who looked at her with everything from pity to disgust. But Silas looked at her different, saw person instead of problem. That counted for something in a world where most folks saw her as both burden and disappointment. "That's kind of you, I accept." She gathered her carpetbag, rose from the station floor on legs still weak from too little food and too much worry. Silas moved forward, offered his arm for support. His touch felt solid, reliable, the first human kindness she'd known since her mother died. Cordelia leaned into that strength more than pride should have allowed. The crew made camp in the cottonwoods by the creek. Dutch kept his distance. The others followed his lead. But they didn't send her away either. Progress in its own small measure. Silas heated beans over the fire. Past her, a tin plate heaped higher than necessary. Coffee black as midnight and strong enough to wake the dead. food that tasted of hope after days of bitter berries and fear. "You got a name, ma'am?" "Cordelia Washington." He nodded, filed it away careful. "Sela's Bramblewood. These are my men. We're driving cattle to Dodge City." Dodge City. She knew that name from her mother's stories. Railroad town. Place where travelers caught trains to anywhere they needed to go, including California where her father waited. How far to Dodge? Week and a half if the weather holds. 2 weeks if it doesn't. 2 weeks traveling with these men. 2 weeks of Dutch's cold stares and the other's whispered comments, but also 2 weeks with Sila's and his quiet decency, his way of making space for damaged things that needed time to heal. The fire crackled between them. Silas studied the flames. His hands wrapped around his coffee cup showed scars from rope and horn, work that marked a man's flesh and left stories in the healing. "Your family know when to expect you." Another lie required. Another small betrayal of truth for the sake of appearing less desperate than she felt. "They'll find me when the time comes." Silas heard something underneath her words, the way people heard wind before storm, the way horses sensed water beyond the next ridge. But he didn't push, didn't pry at wounds still too fresh for prodding. "Well then, reckon we'll get you to Dodge safe and sound, help you find whatever you're looking for." Cordelia met his eyes across the firelight. Something passed between them. Recognition, maybe. The way wounded things knew each other without need for explanation. The way people who'd been cast aside recognized others carrying similar scars. Thunder rolled overhead. The first drops of new rain spattered in the dust. But this time Cordelia sat beside a fire with food in her belly and shelter overhead. This time she wasn't alone. Silas handed her his bedroll. "You take the dry spot under the supply wagon. We'll manage fine." She wanted to refuse, wanted to prove she could endure whatever hardship came without asking for more than she'd already received. But the bedroll felt warm from his body heat, smelled of leather and wood smoke and safety. "Thank you." Two words that carried more weight than their simple syllables suggested. Two words that acknowledged his kindness without begging for more. Two words that might be the beginning of something neither of them expected to find on this broken trail. Silas tipped his hat. "Sleep well, Miss Washington. Tomorrow we start the journey to whatever's waiting ahead." Cordelia settled beneath the wagon with his bedroll wrapped around her shoulders. Rain drummed steady on the canvas above. But for the first time in days, the sound brought comfort instead of fear. Tomorrow meant movement, progress toward her father and the life he promised in his letter. Tomorrow meant traveling beside a man who looked at her with respect instead of revision. Tomorrow meant hope had weight after all. The trail stretched endless under morning sun. Cordelia walked beside the supply wagon while cattle moved in their slow river toward Dodge City. Her feet found rhythm in the dust. Her hands learned the weight of usefulness. On the second day, young Billy Thornton took fever, shaking chills that rattled his teeth and burned his skin dry as desert stone. The men gathered around his bedroll with the helpless look of those who knew rope and leather better than healing. Cordelia knelt beside the boy, pressed her palm to his forehead. The heat told stories of bad water and worse luck, but not death, not yet. She found willow bark by the creek, boiled it careful over the fire, made Billy drink the bitter tea while she bathed his face with cool water, sang low songs her mother used when Cordelia herself burned with childhood fevers. The boy's temperature broke before midnight. Color returned to his cheeks with the dawn. He sat up asking for food and wondering why everyone looked so relieved. The men watched Cordelia different after that. Less suspicion, more curiosity. Even Dutch's cold stares warmed by degrees. On the fourth day, a rattlesnake spooked the lead steer. The animal bolted sideways into the herd. Panic spread through 200 cattle faster than prairie fire. Horns and hooves churned the earth. Dust rose thick enough to choke. Cordelia climbed onto the supply wagon, raised her voice in song, not the spirituals of her mother's teaching but something older, something that reached the animal brain beneath fear and confusion. The cattle slowed, turned toward her voice, found calm in the steady rhythm of melody over chaos. Silas rode up beside the wagon. His winter eyes held new respect, new questions he wasn't ready to ask. Where'd you learn to gentle spooked animals? My mother worked a farm before she married, said singing was cheaper than losing livestock. Truth, but not the whole truth. Her mother knew animals because she understood fear, knew how panic could consume everything rational until only instinct remained, knew how to speak to the frightened creature in all living things. The herd settled back into its patient march. The men resumed their positions. But something had shifted in the way they looked at Cordelia. She'd proven herself useful. That mattered on the trail where everything depended on everyone pulling weight. Dutch still watched her with calculation, still asked questions with his eyes that she couldn't answer without revealing secrets better left buried. On the seventh day, he found what he was looking for. Cordelia knelt by the creek washing her spare dress. The water ran cold and clear over the stones. Peaceful morning before the heat turned brutal. Dutch approached from behind, silent as hunting cat. His shadow fell across the water before she heard his boots. Interesting thing to find in a lady's belongings. She turned. Her carpetbag lay open beside him, her mother's Bible displaced. The gold coins scattered in the dirt catching sunlight. Her father's letter crumpled in Dutch's fist. $200 is serious money, more than most folks see in a lifetime. Cordelia rose slow. Water dripped from her hands. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her voice stayed level. That money belongs to me. Does it now? Funny thing about runaways and thieves. They all got stories about money being rightfully theirs. He called to the others. His voice carried across the camp with the authority of accusation. The men gathered. Silas rode in from checking the herd. Dutch held up the coins. Let them catch the light and throw golden sparks. Found our traveling companion's been keeping secrets. Question is whether she stole this from whoever left her at that station. The words hit harder than fists. Cordelia felt the men's eyes change again. Suspicion replaced respect. Distance grew where acceptance had been building. Silas dismounted. His face showed nothing, but his hands were careful on the reins, the way they got when something might require quick movement. That's a serious charge, Dutch. Serious money calls for serious questions. What's a woman doing alone at an abandoned station with gold coins and no family in sight? Cordelia looked at each face in turn, saw doubt taking root, saw the fragile trust she'd built crumbling under Dutch's certainty. The truth felt heavy on her tongue, but lies had brought her this far. More lies might carry her through. My stepfather left me at that station. The money was hidden there by my real father years ago. Dutch laughed. Sharp sound that cut the morning quiet. Convenient story. Dead fathers leaving treasure for daughters they never knew. Sounds like something a thief would invent. He waved the letter. This talks about underground railroad and helping runaways. Stolen money gets passed along that route all the time. The accusation hung in the air, heavy as storm clouds, darker than anything the sky had threatened. Silas studied the coins in Dutch's palm. His winter eyes gave away nothing, but Cordelia saw the question growing there, the doubt that would poison whatever had been building between them. The letter signed by Solomon Washington, that's my real father's name. Easy enough to forge, easy enough to claim. Dutch pocketed the coins. The gesture said everything about what he intended, about justice as he understood it. We turn her over to the law in Dodge City. Let them sort truth from lies. Terror crawled up Cordelia's spine. Law in Dodge meant questions she couldn't answer, meant prison or worse for a woman with dark skin and no one to speak for her character. Silas stepped forward. His voice carried quiet authority. The money stays with her till we know different. Nobody appointed you judge and jury, Dutch. And nobody appointed you her protector. The two men faced each other across the scattered coins. Years of working together weighed against this moment of choosing sides, trust against suspicion, mercy against what Dutch called justice. The cattle lowed in the distance. The creek ran over stones. The morning held its breath while two visions of right and wrong measured each other in silence. Cordelia gathered the coins with shaking hands, put them back in the carpet bag beside her mother's Bible. The letter went there too, crumpled now but still carrying her father's promise. She stood, faced the circle of men, let them see her whole and unashamed despite their suspicion. The money is mine, the letter proves it, believe what you choose. Some of the men shifted. Young Billy looked confused. The others watched Dutch and Silas square off over a woman who'd proven herself useful but might be dangerous. In the end, Silas's authority held. The coins stayed in Cordelia's possession, but Dutch's questions poisoned the well of acceptance she'd been building. The men kept distance now, watched her careful, wondered what other secrets she carried beneath her quiet competence. Only Silas still looked at her with something approaching trust, but even his winter eyes held shadows now, doubts that would need answering before they reached Dodge City and whatever waited there. The trail stretched ahead, longer than before, more dangerous than when she'd started walking beside these strangers who might yet decide she was more threat than traveling companion. Cordelia shouldered her carpet bag, fell into step beside the supply wagon. The gold coins clinked soft with each footfall, heavy reminder that truth sometimes looked exactly like lies, and lies sometimes became the only truth a person could afford to tell. Night fell heavy over the camp. The men ate their beans in silence. Dutch's accusations hung in the air thick as smoke from the dying fire. Cordelia sat apart from the circle, her plate barely touched, her appetite lost somewhere between suspicion and fear. Silas approached when the others bedded down. His boots whispered in the grass. His shadow fell long across her bedroll. "Walk with me." Not a question, not quite a command either. Something between that asked for trust she wasn't sure she could give. They followed the creek away from camp. Water murmured over stones. Night wind stirred the cottonwoods, far enough from sleeping men that words wouldn't carry back to curious ears. Silas stopped where moonlight painted the water silver. His profile showed the weight of decisions pressing down on broad shoulders. "Tell me true, Cordelia, about that money, about why you were really at that station." The moment she'd been dreading since Dutch scattered her coins in the dirt. The accounting that would determine whether Silas stood with her or cast her aside. Truth felt dangerous on her tongue, but lies had brought her to this crossroads. More lies might destroy the only chance she had at something real. "My stepfather left me there, said no man would ever want me, said I wasn't his problem anymore." The words came slow at first, then faster as the dam broke and everything poured out. Augustus Moore's cruelty, her mother's death, the long years of being unwanted in her own home. 3 days I waited, eating berries, drinking rainwater. Then I found the letter from my real father hidden in the station wall. Silas listened without interruption. His face gave nothing away, but his hands worked steady at a piece of rope, muscle memory keeping fingers busy while his mind processed her confession. "Solomon Washington. Says he left that money for my journey west. Says he's in California waiting for me." "You believe him? This father who disappeared before you were born?" "I have to believe something. Otherwise I'm just a woman alone with stolen gold and nowhere to go." Silas set down his rope work, turned to face her full. His winter eyes searched her face in the moonlight. "What about Augustus? He coming after you?" "Don't know, maybe. Depends how much he hates admitting he abandoned his dead wife's daughter." The creek ran between them. Not wide but deep enough to matter, deep enough that crossing required intention. "I've been cast off too, different reasons but the result's the same." His voice carried old pain, carefully tended wounds that never quite healed. Cherokee mother, Irish father. Neither people wanted much to do with a half-breed who didn't fit either world. Understanding passed between them, recognition of the particular loneliness that came from belonging nowhere, from carrying the marks of otherness that made folks uncomfortable. "That's why you helped me, at the station. Maybe, or maybe you just looked like someone who deserved better than what she got." He stepped closer, close enough she could smell leather and wood smoke in his clothes, close enough to see the scars rope work left on his hands. "I believe you, Cordelia, about the money, about your father. About Augustus leaving you like unwanted cargo. Relief flooded through her, warm as summer rain after drought. Dutch won't let it rest. Dutch answers to me. Long as I say you stay, you stay. His hand touched her cheek, gentle as he'd be with spooked horses, testing whether she'd bolt or lean into the contact. She leaned. The kiss came soft, careful. Two damaged people learning whether they could trust each other with something precious. His mouth tasted of coffee and possibility. When they broke apart, her heart hammered against her ribs, not from fear this time, from hope she hadn't dared feel since her mother died. Silas, I know, it's complicated. You're heading to California. I got a ranch to build here. More complicated than that, look at me. Really look. She stepped back. Let moonlight show him everything Augustus threw in her face. Every curve that made her different from women men supposedly wanted. Every imperfection that marked her as undesirable. Silas's gaze traveled slow, thorough. When his eyes met hers again, they held no disappointment, no revision, just quiet appreciation for what he saw. I see a woman who survived 3 days alone in a broken station, who healed Billy's fever and calmed spooked cattle, who stands up to Dutch's accusations without breaking. His hands framed her face. Thumbs traced her cheekbones. I see someone worth fighting for. The words unlocked something in her chest, something that had been locked away since childhood, since the first time Augustus looked at her with distaste and made her feel small. This time when they kissed, she kissed back. Let herself believe that maybe Augustus was wrong. Maybe there was a man in this world who could see past surface to substance, who valued strength over prettiness. Thunder rolled overhead. Not storm clouds this time, something else entirely. The creek rose fast as melted snow. Water that had murmured gentle suddenly roared angry and brown. Spring runoff from distant mountains turned peaceful stream into torrent. They ran back toward camp, found chaos waiting. The makeshift bridge they'd built for the cattle had washed out. Worse, half the herd was trapped on the far side, cut off by water too deep and fast for crossing. Dutch shouted orders that got lost in the roar. The men scrambled for ropes and horses, but the creek kept rising. Every minute of delay meant cattle pushed further from the main herd. Cordelia studied the terrain, remembered her mother's stories about flash floods and finding high ground, about reading land the way other folks read books. She grabbed Silas's arm, pointed upstream where the water split around a rocky outcrop. There, the creek's shallower where it divides. We can cross if we move fast. Too dangerous. That current would sweep a horse and rider downstream. Not if we rope them together, share the weight. She was already moving toward the horses, already planning the crossing that could reunite the scattered herd. Silas followed. Dutch protested, but losing half their cattle meant financial ruin for everyone. Sometimes the dangerous choice was the only choice. They strung ropes between 3 horses. Cordelia took the middle position. Let the weight of the others anchor her against the current's pull. The water hit cold as winter, strong enough to steal breath and balance. But her mare kept steady, followed Cordelia's gentle guidance through the treacherous crossing. On the far bank, she organized the trapped cattle, used her voice to calm their panic, led them back through the ford while the men held the rope line steady. Every animal made it across, not one lost to the flood or their own fear. Dutch waited on the safe side. His face showed grudging respect mixed with something that might have been shame. He doubted her capability, questioned her character, but when crisis came, she'd risked her life for their shared enterprise. He nodded once, short acknowledgement that she'd earned her place in the outfit. The coins in her bag were her business. The crossing proved her worth beyond any man's questioning. Silas helped her from the saddle. His hands lingered longer than necessary. His eyes held pride that warmed her better than dry clothes and hot coffee. That night she slept in his bedroll, not for passion but for comfort, for the simple human need to lie beside someone who saw her value, who chose her presence over solitude. The creek ran quiet again by morning. The crisis passed into memory, but something permanent had shifted between them. Trust earned in crisis. respect built on shared danger, love taking root in ground prepared by understanding. Dodge City waited ahead. Her father's trail led beyond to California. But for now, this moment, she had enough. A man who believed her, a place in the world, a future that looked different than the one she'd imagined, better in ways she was just beginning to understand. Dodge City rose from the prairie in a haze of dust and possibility. False-fronted buildings lined the main street, saloons and hotels, and the railroad depot that meant passage west to anywhere a person could afford to go. Cordelia walked beside the supply wagon while cattle flowed toward the stockyards. Her heart beat steady rhythm against her ribs. California waited beyond the next train ticket. Her father's promise of a life built for them both. But leaving meant stepping away from Sela's, from the crew that had become something approaching family, from love that had taken root in unlikely ground. The train depot buzzed with travelers, families heading west for homestead claims, businessmen in city suits counting profits from Eastern investments, working men seeking fortune in gold fields and cattle towns. Cordelia studied the departure board. Trains to California left twice weekly. The next one departed in 3 days, enough time to buy passage and gather supplies for the journey ahead. She approached the ticket window, asked about fares and schedules, made plans that felt both necessary and heartbreaking. Behind her, voices carried from the hotel porch. 2 men in railroad company vests shared tobacco and gossip while the afternoon heat pressed down on everything. "You hear about that Solomon Washington fellow?" The name stopped her cold. Her father's name spoken by strangers in casual conversation. "The runaway? What about him?" Marshall's been asking questions. "Seems Washington stole money from his former master back in Missouri. Been tracking him west for months." Cordelia's hands went numb. The train schedule blurred before her eyes. "How much money we talking?" "Enough to put a bounty on his head. $200 reward for information leading to his capture." $200. The exact amount hidden in her carpetbag. The inheritance she'd believed came from her father's heroic work with the Underground Railroad. Blood money. Stolen from the man who'd owned her father's labor and considered it theft when Solomon claimed his own freedom. Word is he's somewhere around Sacramento. Been using that stolen money to help other runaways head north. The second man spat tobacco juice into the street. Sounds like something a thief would do. Spread stolen money around to make himself look righteous. Cordelia backed away from the voices, away from the truth that poisoned everything she'd believed about her father's character. The gold in her bag felt heavy as chains now, tainted by knowledge she wished she could unknow. She found Silas at the stockyards negotiating prices for his cattle. His winter eyes brightened when he saw her approach, then darkened as he read the devastation on her face. "What's wrong?" She told him what she'd overheard, watched understanding dawn in his expression, watched him realize what this meant for her plans to follow Solomon Washington to California. "You sure they were talking about the same man? $200 stolen, same amount I'm carrying, too much coincidence to ignore." Silas leaned against the fence rail. His hands worked automatic at checking rope knots, physical motion to occupy his mind while he processed the implications. Maybe he did steal it, maybe he had good reason. Theft is theft, no matter the reason behind it. Is it? Man steals bread to feed his children. You gonna call that the same as highway robbery? She wanted to believe him, wanted to find justification that would let her keep the money and the dream it represented. But doubt had taken root. Doubt and the crushing possibility that her father was just another criminal, that her inheritance was someone else's stolen property. "I can't go to California carrying stolen money. Can't build a life on that foundation." "So what you planning to do?" Before she could answer, a familiar voice cut through the stockyard noise. Augustus Moore stood by the depot platform, older than she remembered, meaner around the eyes, a sheriff's badge on his vest catching afternoon sunlight. Her stepfather had found her. Worse, he'd found authority to back his claim. Augustus approached with measured steps. His smile held no warmth. No acknowledgement of shared history or her mother's memory. Cordelia, been wondering where you got to after you ran off. You left me at that station, told me I wasn't your problem anymore. Now that's not how I remember it. Way I recall, you stole money from my lockbox and lit out in the night. Sheriff Henderson here agrees that's a serious crime. The lawman beside Augustus studied Cordelia with professional interest. His badge said Henderson clear enough. His expression said he'd already decided guilt based on Augustus's version of events. $200 is a hanging offense for some folks. The threat hung in the air, clear as summer sky, clear as the choice being forced on her. Silas stepped forward. His presence changed the dynamics, added weight to her side of the scales. I'm Silas Bramblewood. Miss Washington has been traveling with my outfit. Haven't seen any evidence of theft. And who might you be to vouch for her character? Someone who's seen her risk her life to save other people's property. Someone who's watched her prove her worth every day on the trail. Augustus laughed. Sharp sound that cut through the stockyard noise. Silas, is it? Let me save you some trouble. That woman's been nothing but burden since the day I married her mother. Too much appetite, too little prospect. No man in his right mind would saddle himself with damaged goods. The words hit their target. Cordelia felt the old shame rise, the certainty that Augustus spoke truth about her worth and desirability. But Silas's hand found hers, squeezed gentle reminder that someone saw different, someone valued what Augustus dismissed. I see a woman worth fighting for, worth standing beside no matter what accusations get thrown. His declaration carried across the stockyard, drew attention from drovers and cattle buyers, made public statement that couldn't be taken back. Augustus's smile turned ugly. You proposing to marry that, really? I am. The words changed everything, drew lines that couldn't be uncrossed, committed Silas to a future he might not have planned but was willing to claim. Sheriff Henderson shifted his weight, reassessed the situation with new information. Marriage don't erase theft charges. Good thing there's no theft to prove. Dutch appeared beside them. The foreman who doubted her from the beginning now stood ready to defend her honor. Young Billy flanked him. The rest of the crew gathered close. Her chosen family. People who'd seen her character tested and found worthy. People willing to stand against authority for the sake of someone they'd come to value. Augustus read the crowd, saw public opinion shifting against him, saw his lies meeting organized resistance. Sheriff, I want that money returned. Want justice for what she stole. Then you'll have to prove she stole it, in court, with witnesses and evidence. Henderson's tone suggested he'd lost enthusiasm for Augustus's version of events. Too many people vouching for Cordelia's character, too little proof supporting the theft charges. Course, filing false charges carries penalties too. Might want to consider whether you're certain about your accusations. Augustus worked his jaw, calculated odds and consequences, realized his position wasn't as strong as he'd assumed. The standoff stretched tight as fence wire, two versions of truth facing each other across the dusty ground, justice and prejudice measuring each other in the failing light. Cordelia stood between her past and future, between the stepfather who'd cast her aside and the man who'd claimed her as worth defending, between shame and love, between running toward an uncertain father and staying beside the family she'd found on the trail. The choice was hers to make. Cordelia opened her carpetbag with steady hands. The gold coins caught afternoon light as she poured them onto the depot platform. $200 in gleaming metal, her father's legacy or someone else's stolen property. I won't carry money that might belong to another soul. Won't build my future on uncertain ground. Augustus reached for the coins, greed plain on his weathered face, but Sheriff Henderson's hand stopped him. Hold on there. Lady's making a choice about her own property. Don't see where you get first claim. That money was stolen from my house. So you say, but saying and proving are different things entirely. The crowd pressed closer, drawn by the spectacle of a woman giving up a fortune, by the rare sight of someone choosing principle over profit. An elderly man pushed through the gathering. silver hair beneath a worn conductor's cap, railroad company badge on his vest, authority written in the way he carried himself. "Excuse me, folks, name's Thomas Whitman, been station master here 15 years. He studied the gold coins scattered on the platform. Recognition dawned in his lined features. Haven't seen coins marked this way since before the war. These came from the old Underground Railroad network. Money left at safe stations for travelers needing help." Augustus stepped forward. "That don't prove nothing about who they belong to now. Actually, it does." Whitman reached into his vest pocket, pulled out a worn ledger, kept records of every transaction, every deposit and withdrawal from the network funds. He flipped through pages yellow with age, found the entry he sought. Here, Broken Creek Station, $200 deposited by Solomon Washington, May 15, 1867. Note says, "For my daughter Cordelia when she comes looking." The words fell like hammer blows. Augustus's accusations crumbled to dust. The crowd murmured understanding. Justice had a witness after all. "Your father wasn't stealing, miss. He was saving. Every dollar he earned working for the railroad company after he got his freedom papers. Took him 3 years to save enough for your passage west." Cordelia's knees nearly buckled. Relief flooded through her system. Her father was a hero after all. A man who'd worked honest labor and saved every penny for the daughter he hoped would find him. Sheriff Henderson nodded slow. "Seems pretty clear the money belongs to the lady. No crime committed except in someone's imagination." Augustus's face went red as fresh blood. "This is fixed. All of you working together to cheat me out of what's rightfully mine. Only thing rightfully yours is the shame of abandoning your dead wife's child." The words came from Dutch. The foreman who doubted Cordelia from the beginning now stood as her defender. His weathered face showed disgust for a man who'd cast off family. "Seen a lot of sorry behavior in my time, but leaving a woman alone at an abandoned station ranks among the lowest." The crowd agreed with murmurs and nods. Augustus found himself facing judgment from people who understood the code of the frontier, who knew that family obligations ran deeper than blood. "Come on, Henderson, we got business elsewhere." The sheriff studied Augustus with professional distaste. "We surely do." Starting with a discussion about filing false charges. They walked away together. Augustus's accusations dissolved in the dust of their departure. The crowd began to disperse. The drama ended without the satisfaction of violence or arrest. Cordelia gathered her father's coins with reverent hands. Each piece felt different now. Blessed by honest labor instead of tainted by theft. Proof of a parent's love reaching across years of separation. But understanding changed her plans in ways she hadn't expected. "I'm not going to California." Silas looked up from checking the supply wagon. "Why not? Your father's waiting. You got the money for passage." "My father saved this money for my journey to him, but I found something better on the trail, found people who chose me when I needed choosing." She gestured toward the crew preparing for the journey home. Dutch organizing supplies, Billy watering the horses, men who'd become family through shared hardship and mutual respect. "Found a man who sees my worth when the world sees burden." Silas set down his rope work. Approached with the careful movement he used around valuable things that might spook. "You sure? California's been your dream since that station." "Dreams change. Sometimes what we find is better than what we went looking for." His hands framed her face. Thumbs traced her cheekbones with the gentleness he showed frightened animals. "Marry me, Cordelia Washington, not because you got nowhere else to go, because I can't imagine going anywhere you're not." Yes. One word that changed everything. One word that chose love over obligation. Present joy over uncertain reunion. They married 3 days later in the small church beside Dodge City's cemetery. Dutch walked her down the aisle because family was who stood beside you when standing mattered. Billy played fiddle because celebration required music. The crew served as witnesses because some promises needed proper observation. Cordelia wore her mother's wedding dress. altered to fit but carrying the blessing of a woman who'd known both heartbreak and hope. The gold coins bought supplies for their new ranch, tools and livestock, and the foundation of a life built on honest ground. She kept $20, enough to help the next desperate soul who stumbled into their lives needing assistance. Her father's legacy transformed from personal salvation into continuing kindness. The ranch grew season by season. Cattle multiplied. The house expanded room by room. Neighbors came to respect the woman who could heal fever and gentle spooked animals, who stood beside her husband as equal partner in building something lasting. Years passed. Cordelia never wrote to California, never sent word to the father who'd saved for her passage west, but she thought of him with gratitude, for the money that had sustained her through crisis, for the love that had reached across time to provide exactly what she'd needed when she'd needed it most. On quiet evenings, she and Silas sat on their porch watching sunset paint the prairie gold. Their children played in the yard. Dutch visited for Sunday dinner. Billy brought his wife and babies to celebrate holidays. Family gathered around the table, not born but chosen, not blood but bonds forged in crisis and strengthened through joy. Cordelia had found her place at last, not in California with the father who'd saved for her journey, but here in Kansas with the people who'd seen her value and claimed her as their own. The abandoned woman at Broken Creek Station had become the heart of something beautiful, something lasting, something that proved Augustus wrong about everything that mattered. Love had found her after all. Love that saw past surface to substance. Love that chose her completely. The cowboy had loved her like no one ever had, and she had loved him back with everything she possessed. In the end, that was enough, more than enough. It was everything. And that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.